So this book, and I did get a few emails on it, called Dear Boy, The Life of Keith Moon. It's not a new book, but this is an updated edition of the book that has come out. Really, I don't think much has changed since 1978, since Keith Moon passed away. Now we have no longer the pleasure of the company of his great partner, bass player John Entwistle, who passed away back in 2002. Of course, it's an argument that could go on forever, but I think it would be pretty darn difficult to suggest there was a better rhythm section than Keith Moon and John Entwistle. Let me rephrase that. I don't know you could say there was a more exciting rhythm section than those two gentlemen. And John Entwistle, the Ox, was playing about 8 instruments at one. We'll give you a perfect example of these two guys in sync in just a few moments. But Keith Moon was a guy, and really as I'm reading this book, and I kind of read about Keith Moon over the years, some of this, as a matter of fact, one of the great things about this book is it tends to debunk a lot of the rumors and myths around Keith Moon's life. But one thing that I kind of always figured was the case, and it seems to be confirmed in this, is that Keith Moon was such an intensely likable guy. He had such a likable face, and that was the case with him from a very early age, that he was precocious and he loved pranks and that sort of thing, but he had that smile, and even when you see it in pictures, you see, I can understand how this guy tested friendships to the very limit, and he did that throughout his entire life. I think he had some problems. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Behind that incredibly entertaining exterior was a pretty mixed up guy. But what a drummer. The other thing about Keith Moon, and again, I always kind of figured this to be the case, that from moment one, people knew this guy was going to be a star, and that's exactly the way the story is told, that his teenage friends, even his preteen friends, said, when Keith Moon said he was going to be a rock star, everybody believed him. However, the difference between having the qualities, the non-musical qualities essential to be a rock star, and they, of course, are incredible dedication, looks, personality, these sort of things. But then you got to play your instrument as well, unless you were one of the two members of Milli Vanilli, and that was not the case. It is important to note, by the way, that in the early 1960s, and we'll get a great taste of some of that stuff coming up on Saturday night at the Sound Academy for the Q107 Summer Bash, with a bunch of terrific tributes to the British invasion. But during those early 60s years, bands like particularly the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, the Who, the big bands, there was so much screaming going on that bands didn't really play the way they play today. You didn't have to. Most people say, you never heard the Beatles. Billy Joel's Last Play at Shea, which is a really good DVD, has Paul McCartney in it. And one of the things that comes up about Shea Stadium, the home of the Beatles after the legendary 1965 concert, so you're never going to hear anything. And the Rolling Stones found that out in 1969. As for Keith Moon, well, you were going to hear what he was doing, because he realized at the very early age of about 10 that he was not only going to be a rock star, but he was going to take the drums and turn them into a lead instrument. But according to his buddy Jerry, it did not start well. This comes from Dear Boy, The Life of Keith Moon. And Jerry, his teenage pal, says this about a 14-year-old Keith Moon. This bloke, he got on a drum set and he was Buddy Rich, Louis Bellson immediately. Although, interestingly, as an aside, it was Gene Krupa that was Keith Moon's great influence. Says Jerry, he was like a madman let loose on a drum kit with no idea what he was doing. He was just hitting everything in sight and making a lot of noise. To me, it was the thing you don't do, and it sounded like rubbish. It was like dealing with a madman. I was saying to him, no, Keith, don't do all that. Try and learn a paradiddle. And he wasn't having any of that. There was no way that this guy was going to be a professional drummer. It was impossible, because he didn't have a clue. He was like the worst drummer you'd ever seen.